Welcome to March's edition of 4 and 4. I'm Kathy Halgren, Director of South St. Paul Public Library, and this month I'm going to do something a little different. I'll review 3 main titles, and then have mini reviews of 3 other books. There were just too many good ones to choose from this month. The paperback edition of Rash's The Cove is now out, and while this was the first novel of his I've read, it won't be the last. In this book, World War I rages on, and Laurel Shelton, a lovely young woman with an unfortunate birthmark, has been labeled a witch and shunned by nearly everyone in her small North Carolina town. She lives with her brother Hank in an area known as the Cove, and the author really shines at painting a picture of this dark, lonely place with its disillusioned characters. Laurel is susceptible to any attention that comes her way, so when she comes across a handsome, mute man in the surrounding woods, she falls hard, drawn by his gorgeous flute music. But what's his story? And what was he doing hiding out in the cove? Once you start reading this, you'll want to know who this man is, and you'll hope that Laurel can hold on to this newfound happiness as the war comes to an end. One of Rash's earlier books, Serena, has been adapted for film and is currently being produced in Prague with Bradley Cooper and Jennifer Lawrence playing lead roles. Thomas Maltman's Little Wolves takes us out onto the Minnesota prairie in the mid-1980s. There are 2 main stories of Clara and Logan Warren and the Seth Fallon family. The Warrens have just moved to the small town of Lone Mountain after Clara convinces her husband to become the pastor at a local church, but she has an ulterior motive. She's trying to figure out the mystery of her birth and her mother, and she believes this town knows the secret. Very early in the novel, teenaged Seth Fallon has walked into town and shot the sheriff. His father, grieving his son, is also trying to keep his farm while battling demons from the past that small towns are loath to give up. Everyone in their place, and what a place this is. The drought of the 80s envelops this novel as you can just feel the heat radiating from the earth, stirring up emotions of these descendants of German farmers as the coyotes and wilderness come ever closer to town. This book has been billed as a mystery. I don't see it that way so much as an uncovering of the dark side of insulated communities. Maltman has the ability to delineate a character with very few words and actions. It's as if you know who these people are. And his reverence for the land and nature is evident in such phrases as sleek as silence, and the trees had retreated inside themselves in a bad time, letting down dusty leaves and dreaming of the promised season. And there's so much more to this novel, including Old English words and mythology. Loved it. Alyson Richman gained quite a following with her recent book, The Lost Wife. Now, a book previously titled Swedish Tango has been re-released as The Rhythm of Memory, and I'm sure it will be just as popular. In this book, the stories of 3 families become intertwined when various members all end up in Sweden. The overriding story concerns Octavio and Salome, who fled Chile and the horrors of Pinochet's rule in 1974 and settled in Sweden. In 1942, Kaja, a Finnish child born to a loving family too poor to care for all their children during the war, was sent to Sweden to wait out the war with a Swedish family. This aspect of the book was really interesting to me since a couple weeks previous to picking up the book to review, I had gone to a presentation by a man from Finland who had been one of these war children in Sweden. Luckily, he had had a wonderful experience, but his sister did not. I had no idea this had even occurred. The last family in the novel is the Rudin family, who escaped the Nazis by leaving France for Peru in 1939. Samuel, who was only 7 at the time his family left Europe, is now a psychiatrist in Sweden working with victims of war. And that's how the families in this novel interconnect. Now I have 3 brief snippets about other notable books of the season. First, The Aviator's Wife by Melanie Benjamin. This book gives a fictional account of Anne Murrow Lindbergh, the long-suffering wife of Charles Lindbergh. You didn't know that? Well, read this and you will. Anne was an accomplished pilot herself, but her early ambition was to become a writer. Most people know about Charles and the kidnapping of their son, but this book focuses on Anne and her unique role of wife to the famous aviator. Dick Wolf of Law and Order fame has released his first novel, The Intercept, and it's been getting mixed reviews, so judge for yourself. Jeremy Fisk is an intel officer of the NYPD, and the book deals primarily with preventing terroristic attacks in New York City. I don't generally read these kinds of books, but I found the various ways terrorists cover their tracks fascinating, and the main story surrounds an attempted hijacking of a plane from Stockholm to the US. The hijacking is foiled, but Fisk believes there was someone else on the plane that could prove to be more competent and get the job done. Finally, Tracy Chevalier of Girl with a Pearl Earring fame has a new book, The Last Runaway. Honor Bright, a Quaker, has just arrived in the U.S. from England and is now attempting to make a life in Ohio. It's the 1800s and she's having a very hard time living with the fact that her new country defends the practice of slavery. Will she live out her principles and join the Underground Railroad, or pray for change? If you love to quilt, you just might like this book since it's believed quilts were used as signals to runaway slaves on their journey north. That's all for this edition of 4 and 4. We ran over a little bit, but we'll see you in May with 4 more titles in 4 minutes.